Hello and welcome to the 11th episode of Tech Horizons. My name is Madeleine Skillen. I'm the Senior Regional Marketing Manager at Procore Technologies. And today I'm joined by my friend and colleague, Tony Harbour, Head of Technology Partnerships at Procore. Tony, it's great to have you in Dubai. Welcome.
Awesome. Yeah, finally. Great to be here. It's been a long time coming, this one, definitely.
It has. I've been trying to get you in the podcast studio for a while.
Looking forward to it. Should be good.
Yeah, for sure. For our listeners that aren't aware of who you are, I'm sure you know many Procorean prospects and customers, but for those that don't know you, could you just give me a quick overview of your career to date?
Yeah, sure. I'll give you the abbreviated version because we could be here for a little bit. So, yeah, I started at Procore about 3.5 years ago, but I've spent the last 25 years in and around the construction industry. I originally started out trying to study to be a mechanical engineer. Quickly realised that I could earn a lot more money in the sales game and moved into technical sales for a couple of distributors and manufacturers. Spent a lot of time within that kind of world, various commercial project management roles. And yeah, but I got involved in construction tech probably about 15 years ago on some of the projects we were working on. It was starting to become a bit of a thing. People were starting to talk a lot about BIM coming in a big way coming into the industry, and technology was really going to start to kick off, and been really interested in it for a long time. COVID kind of saw me take a bit of a punt and move out of construction and then into the tech world. And yeah, like I said, been here 3.5 years. Originally started out heading up there or starting off the technology partner program for Procore in EMEA, which I'm sure we're going to get into in a bit of detail. For sure. But now I look after our global project execution, project management and ERP partners globally. So it's definitely an interesting role, that's for sure.
Well, it's great that you're now at an intersection of spending so many years in construction and then pivoting slightly into tech and bringing all of that great knowledge and experience with you. Today, we're really interested in learning more about the partner ecosystem and indeed platform technology. So as a first question, I just want to understand a little bit more about Procore's platform technology, what it entails, and what makes platform technology actually stand out in the construction industry.
Yep, this is great. I love this question. Get asked this a hell of a lot. And look, I think the first thing to talk about really is the word platform's really bandied around a lot.
It's like a buzzword now.
Exactly. Everybody's got a platform. You know, the minute a new solution comes out, it's a platform technology. I think the first thing to notice is that from Procore's perspective, first and foremost, we've always been a platform, right? We've been a platform since day one. You hear a lot of solutions out in the market that they call themselves a platform, but ultimately they're just, platforms by acquisition. And what I mean by that is they're just, acquiring companies, bolting them together, changing the name of the entire solution, and hey presto, we have a platform. The big problem you typically see with that is that when these companies acquire a number of other solutions and bolt them together, sometimes the tech doesn't always talk to one another. So they're very disconnected in terms of workflows. They often don't talk together very well. You can't build integrations into certain things. So it really does become a bit of a problem. That leaves obviously a bad taste in people's mouths. They have a bad experience with one platform. Everybody gets lumbered in the same kind of boat, and people really struggle with it. So I think that the key thing from Procore is because we've been that platform from day one, everything talks really simply to one another. We have that open API platform which people can build into. You can build reports out. The workflows are really connected. So look, I think that's really the key thing for me is just the ability to have all of these solutions talking across the board rather than it just being, one or two tools being able to work with each other.
Yeah, siloed solutions.
Exactly that.
The cobbling together of siloed solutions, essentially.
Exactly. Yeah, that's essentially what it is. And I think people have really bad experiences with that, again, we can get into this in a bit more detail a bit later on, but I see a lot of people having problems in construction with these kind of single point solutions, and you need a platform to kind of pull all of that together to get the best out of it.
And you touched upon it, but internal buy-in is so key when you're investing in expensive technology. But obviously, if people have had a bad experience, it's then going to mar their opinion of the industry as a whole. And then it makes it very difficult sometimes for us to talk, authentically to these people, because they've already kind of in some way brought some emotional baggage along the way into the room.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a really good example. A friend of mine, a neighbour of mine, excuse me, works for a local house builder back in the UK, and they're just starting to get into that digital transformation journey at the moment. And they've implemented a technology solution, had an extremely bad experience with it. The problem is now every time I talk to him and say, hey, look, let's have a conversation. I can introduce some guys at Procore, see if we can get something done. They're just not interested, because I think they're almost grieving, if you like, you know what I mean, from the fact that they've had such a bad experience that it's such a difficult thing for them to say, look, I've got to move away from it and we'll just go back to the traditional way of working. And that's a real shame, I think. It'll get better, and people will kind of understand it and they'll look at it objectively and figure out what's best for them. But yeah, it is seriously a problem, that's for sure.
Yeah. And it sounds an overly emotional response, but actually it's not, because most people buy from the heart.
Exactly that.
So yeah, no, very interesting. In terms of the criteria then that is set for selecting the right technology partner, because we don't just take anybody, I don't want to say we're super exclusive, but we're exclusive enough to make sure that it serves the market in the way that it needs to serve.
Yeah.
What is that criteria that's set?
Do you know what? It's changed a lot. So we've had the marketplace now in Procore since 2016, when I think we originally launched with maybe 20 partners. And in the early days, it was very much a case of, back office functionality, email, calendar, meeting solutions. As the marketplace has grown and the industry's become more and more accustomed to it, it's now become more of customer requirements or legacy systems that people are just not going to get rid of in construction. Speaking from experience in the industry, people are very, very hesitant to move away from something that works really well. And I think when you've got that scenario, trying to sort of say to them, look, just remove that. You might have been using it for the last 10 plus years. That's very difficult to do. And then you start to lose a lot of, not respect, but you start to lose a lot of buy-in from those customers when they do that. So I think the key thing for me has been, customer requirements is a big thing. That's a big criteria. We also see a lot about product gaps. And again, we'll touch on this, I think, a couple of sort of bit later on within the podcast. But, gaps within the product is a big thing for us. It's great if we have multiple solutions. And look, we've got the largest contech marketplace out there with 500, I think with 520 integrations now globally, which is...
Wow.
Yeah, whether you knew that or not, I don't know. But
I mean, because it's growing so exponentially fast, to be honest, the last time I heard, the last count was 460. Now you're saying it's over 500.
Yeah, we're about 520 now, so which is great. And don't get me wrong, that's fantastic, having that number. We developed it to give customers the choice and break down the barriers, if you like, of using technology. And I think one of the big things you'll see in construction is you put something in front of them and say, well, can I connect X, Y, and Z into this? And you say, sorry, you can't, they'll lose interest, okay? So we've done it to give them the ability to pick and choose what they want to use and what they want to connect into Procore. So that's the reason it's so big. That does breed problems. But the other element, so what about, I said customer requirements, product gaps. From a product gap perspective, I think the big thing for me is always, do we pick a solution that overlaps with Procore, or do we pick a solution that's really complementary? And some solutions we've got, there are slight overlaps, but then you start to get into, if you have, solutions which are really overlapping with Procore, you then start to get in the realm of, well, do I need both of these? Do I just need one of these? It starts to then add a bit confusion into these people's minds. So that's definitely a big thing. And industry trends as well. So look, we can talk about AI, and you've had guests on talking about AI in the past.
A lot, yeah.
Industry trends is a big thing. So, if customers are coming to us and saying, look, we've seen this is the next big thing, we really want to integrate this. It also gives them the ability to dip their toes into that tech, right? They might not want to invest heavily into it. So if they can download an integration or an app that enables them to kind of dip their toe into that tech, see if it works for them, is it going to work for their business? That often works really well as well.
For me, what you've just said then is that this ecosystem really serves to give customers' choice.
Yeah.
Which is why we've got the breadth of partners that we have. It also allows them to build upon their existing tech stack instead of starting net new, which again causes less disruption. And then finally, for me, I think it's also about making sure that the customer's journey is the right one for them, which is why, again, it goes back to that choice and making sure that we're a true partner in the industry and we're not just trying to flog them something that maybe they don't really need, which is why the trialing process that you just described seems so beneficial.
Yeah, and that's a really key point, you know, putting the power back into their hands and giving them the ability, rather than us dictating you must use this or you must use that. That's a hugely powerful thing, right, for these guys.
Yeah. So in terms of technology integrations then, how do they more specifically enhance Procore's capabilities as a platform?
Yeah, so look, as I touched on at the beginning of this, we don't cover everything, okay? And there's nothing controversial about that, I don't think, in terms of what I'm saying there. I think the big thing for me is you are never going to get a platform anywhere in any walk of life that covers everything that it absolutely needs to. You know, you can even look at Microsoft, you can look at Google, you can look at Amazon. You know, all of these companies have marketplaces. They have integrations because they want to enhance, the operability of people using it. Procore's no different in that fact, right? So by having these integrations kind of deeply integrated into Procore, it just gives people the choice. It gives them the flexibility to, include all their back office functionality into Procore. It enables the guys on site to enter information really simply and really easily. Ultimately, they're just collecting all the data in a single place, rather than it being point solutions, siloed, as we said before. It's very much a case of getting all that data in a single area, getting the reports, getting the collaboration developed in that single place, and just making better decisions moving forward.
The data visibility is a massive thing, as we know, in the industry as well, because we're not at a shortage of data, but we're not really driving the right decisions off the back of the data because we're not consolidating it. So I think that's a key point, really. And it touches upon almost every episode that I have. People talk about data.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's kind of like the core, it's the bread and butter of everything that's done on the construction site.
It is. I mean, look, I go back to one of the first contech events I ever attended, probably 15 plus years ago in London. And I really remember that the guy kind of stood up and said, look, in construction, data is going to be the new oil, right? And it was a really cliched, and people were like, oh, not sure if that's going to be right. But it really is. I mean, if you think, I always kind of liken it to going on construction sites 20 years ago. You'd walk into that site office, there's drawing racks everywhere with drawings on, there's filing cabinets, there's paper stacks on people's desks, there's folders in shelves in that site office. That's all data, but can you imagine sifting through paper on a daily basis, trying to get the right bit of information? It's impossible. So the fact that you've digitized all of that now, and that's, it's at the touch of a button now, it gives people the opportunity to interrogate the data better. I think that's the key thing. It's great we're bringing all this data to front, but if you can't interrogate it and make the decisions from it, it's worthless.
Someone once said to me that if it's not data, it's just an opinion.
That's probably true as well, yeah.
And would you make a decision based entirely off an opinion?
Everybody's got an opinion, haven't they, at the end of the day?
Well,
so I think you can make a right or wrong decision, but if you've got the data to back up that, that decision that you want to make, it's a much easier thing to do.
Yep. So from a strategic point of view, what approach do you take in kind of really helping to maintain these relationships and also for them to thrive? Yeah,
I mean, the key thing for us is, look, we get a lot of partners that want to join the marketplace, and I think a lot of them do it from a marketing kick. I think certainly in certain parts of the globe with Procore, they see it as a real opportunity to get some marketing, get some advertisement done on social media. We're integrated with Procore, this is great. But I think the really key thing for us is go-to-market activities is absolutely crucial for us. By having the ability to build out or give our internal staff in Procore all the information they need to make the decisions. With customers coming to us, we're getting more and more customers coming to us now saying, well, who do you recommend for an integration? Now, with 500 partners on a marketplace, that's very difficult to do. So what we're trying to do now is is really streamline the marketplace a bit to become a lot more almost peer reviewed, if that makes sense. So, you know, if you go onto marketplaces, I mean, this is something that we're looking into sort of completing in the next 12 to 18 months. But, you know, if you go onto any app store with any type of solution, there's reviews, there's ratings, you know, what's hot, what's the best thing.
What's hot, what's not.
Well, exactly right. Yeah. And I think when you go into construction is very peer-to-peer orientated. So, you know, one construction company, if they're using a certain solution and they're doing extremely well with it, they're finishing their projects quicker, everybody's comfortable with it, you know, they're making more profit at the end of the day because that's what it's all about. The next construction company goes, well, what are you using for that? How are you doing that? They pass the recommendations along, and it grows from there. So we're looking at more of a peer-reviewed way of looking at it. You know, our sort of strategic approach is definitely around the product gap side of things. So where we have gaps in our products that can't be met by our own internal roadmap, integrations can fill that gap really well. Making sure the integrations really mean something. I think because we're an open platform as well, which is a big thing. You know, we get a lot of companies that will just build a very basic integration, won't really do a great deal. Some can't, but it won't do a great deal. So, you know, by enhancing those integrations, making them really solid, connect to a load of different tools, bi-directional sharing of information, so swapping information between the two systems, they're all really, really important for us. And I think that the final point to make on that is the different regional variants, which is a really big thing. Okay, you know, from a Middle East perspective, you know, we're here now sitting in Dubai, and it's the difference is regional. I think people underestimate, you know, the requirements of that on a global scale. In that,
definitely,
if you look at a solution in the US, for example, it might be fantastic, it might be great, but can it operate, you know, in the region? Do they have the support network that it can operate in the region? You know, do they have kind of case studies that they can point out? Because again, that peer-to-peer review is a big thing. You know, you need to have case studies, you need to have kind of customer testimonials as well. So all of those really kind of play a part from a strategic standpoint of these partners.
Yeah. Now, you're very well affair with the Middle East. Any excuse to be here, and you're here.
Yeah, I don't mind it. I mean, look, the UK is not the best in terms of weather terms at the moment, so it's always
Dubai
nice.
Is pretty hot at the moment as well.
It is. I'm not going to lie. It is. Yeah, it's definitely slightly warmer than usual. But look, no, I love it over here. It's great.
Yeah, and in terms of the regional nuance here, is there anything that you could pinpoint more specifically?
What, in terms of tech itself?
In terms of tech itself, the integration journey, and indeed maybe some of the needs of this region versus the needs of other regions.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I always point out about the Middle East is I think there are a lot of legacy systems. There's a lot of hangover from legacy systems in the Middle East. You know, certain solutions have been around for a long time here. People have kind of really embedded with that. But on the flip side of that, the one thing I would say about the region is, although risk has a big part to play, you know, they don't want to take too much risk. They are very willing to try and test new solutions, which you don't really get in a lot of other regions across the globe. It's very risk averse. It's very well, you know, 50 people are using this. Is this going to be worthwhile me using? What I love about the Middle East is that some of the tech that's coming out of this region is phenomenal.
It is, yeah.
It really is. And there's pockets of it in certain parts of the Middle East. Just the willingness to kind of try new solutions to see if it works. I think that's a really big thing for me. It's always amazed me in the Middle East construction market, things like safety solutions, right? Have never been really a big part to play. That's starting to play a massive part now.
Now it's booming.
It is. It's
when
huge.
we look at safety.ai.
I was just about to mention those
Weight
guys
Cap.
as well. Yeah, exactly that.
Yeah.
All of those kind of companies they're serving a purpose in the industry, and it's, I think, from a Western construction company point of view, where health and safety laws are just that. They're laws in the UK and Ireland.
Stringent, yeah.
Exactly, very stringent. You get fined massively if you don't complete that. It's important on construction that is done. You know, you walk into construction sites now in the UK, and there's always the safety board that goes up the front, this many days until the last accident. You know, again, in the early days, you'd walk on there and there'd be 3 accidents a day or something like that. Now there's none over like a 6-month period. I'm pretty sure that's the same in the Middle East, but these solutions have really kind of come into play to help stop that.
There's so much progress being made here when it comes to health and safety. And the one thing that I've noticed is with tech, if we can avoid putting a physical person into a very dangerous situation, it's being done now. The introduction of robotics, I would say more commonly on the construction site, is huge here. But definitely. I think also that attitude of trialing and testing is testament to the scale and the complexity of the projects here, and the fact that they've got no choice.
Exactly.
I mean,
that.
It's about...
You're never going to build these projects without tech, right?
Yeah.
It's not going to happen. You're not going to be able to achieve those kind of ambitious growth plans without utilising tech, without, adopting it on the projects and making it work. Yeah,
absolutely. Now, everybody's very focused on project efficiency and profitability, especially profitability.
Definitely in construction, especially,
Yeah, the bottom line is very important. And I understand why, because it's a very expensive industry and delays can be highly costly. In terms of the integrations that we offer, and you obviously being within the integration ecosystem, how does that look to benefit that bottom line and profitability?
It all goes back to that point I made at the very beginning around that interoperability of all of these solutions together. Okay, if you can imagine a company, we'll use Procore as the example because we both work for Procore. But if you imagine a company utilising Procore for 12 months, great. They haven't got any integrations integrated into that. They're using Procore for their construction project, but they've got their health and safety team can't access any information. Their accounting team can't access any information. Their design team can't access any information. Could you imagine going to that company in 12 months and saying, well, how's it been going? Has it been working really well? Yeah, it's okay, but we're not really sure if this is something we want to continue with. You then go, right, well, we've got Procore at the core. We've got all of these different solutions connected in. Everybody's working in that single system and doing that. Their efficiencies go through the roof. The speed of work goes through the roof. One example I always use, and people have probably heard this when I've done talks all over the place, but I always use the example of RFIs. Something so simple on a construction site, but I remember, putting in an RFI on a construction site and you'd be, in a room or a floor in a building, you'd notice something was wrong, you'd have to contact the architect for a information request. You'd write this down on a bit of paper. You'd maybe go to the site office. Someone might email somebody. That takes a couple of days before anybody's got it. Another 3 or 4 days for somebody to get it, answer it, get it back to you. You've lost a week's worth of work. Nowadays, that's done at the touch of a button. That can be entered where you're standing. You can send that to somebody. They'll get a notification. They'll answer it, and you'll get the answer straight back. That's all about speed of time, okay? We're talking about profitability. We've mentioned that a couple of times, but I don't think people can underestimate how important that is. You look at some of these construction companies, and I'm not sure what the profit margins are from a Middle Eastern perspective, but I can speak in certainly in Europe and UK and Ireland, we're talking about 1-2% profit margins. That's not a lot of money for these companies to kind of have in reserve for a little mistake or overrun of projects. So you imagine now speeding that up, making it a lot easier for them to make decisions, getting the decisions made quicker, getting the work completed quicker. For me, it's all about, speed, time, efficiencies, and just improving everybody's kind of working day.
Time is money.
Absolutely right.
And so is balance. Balance is incredibly important.
It is.
And I think trying to introduce that into this industry is really at the forefront of many leaders' minds at the moment, especially with COVID kind of being a turning point, I would say. Yeah,
that was a big, I think for me, it was personally, it was a big turning point for me. But I know in the industry, it was a huge turning point because I think people were very hesitant and everybody panicked thinking, how are we going to run this project from, 30, 40 miles away? It's worked really well. It's accelerated the adoption of this technology. Another story I always use is I think the best people you will find to adopt technology on a construction site are the older guys on the site that have been on there for 20, 30 plus years, since their teens working on the construction site. You put an iPad or a mobile device with an app in their hands and you show them what it can do for their working day, they can get their work completed quicker, much more efficiently. They get to go home earlier and on time. They're the ones that spread the news on a construction site. It's not, generically, it's the guys that have been really experienced. To your point about kind of the balance element, that's hugely important. No one wants to be doing sort of 12, 18-hour days on a construction site, putting yourself at risk. If you can complete your work much safer and more efficiently, why not?
That's an interesting perspective, actually, because I think when we talk about the integration of technology into process, we often say that it's the Gen Zs or the Gen Zs that are really leading the way. They're demanding it, they want it, they're digital natives. Yeah. But actually, as you've just said, it's also those that have been on the construction site for many years that have grown frustrated with how all of the workarounds and how arduous some of these processes are, that actually the introduction of something that is going to give them back their time and allow them to sit at the dinner table with their families in the evening is going to be wholly welcomed.
Yeah, absolutely right. And that, like I said, that's the biggest thing I've seen, even from, we were talking about this before, even just things about getting home to your kids early, right? Be able to spend time with your kids. I used to commute to London 5 days a week, leaving at 6 o'clock in the morning, getting home at sort of 6, 7 o'clock at night. And that's not a lot of time to spend with your family. But you can imagine that now, breaking that up now and going, well, I can spend 3 days on site and I can spend, a couple of days at home doing the same, being just as productive, if not more productive in some cases. That's a huge thing. And I do think it's going to breed new job roles in the industry. I think you're going to get to the point where, you look at a lot of these large construction companies now, they've got CTOs. A CTO in a construction company, that was never heard of.
Tech champions.
Tech champions.
We have
digital construction managers.
We have Procore super users.
Exactly right. And you would never have heard of that in construction. I'd probably guess maybe even 10 years ago, they might have started coming in then. But, now every construction company's got a CTO. It's got a digital construction manager. It's got a tech evangelist. It's got something along those lines, all championing tech within the industry. But I also think you'll start to see more and more of these job roles coming in. So the Gen Z people will be coming in, I want to be a robotics expert in construction, I want to be an AI analyst in construction. That's going to start to become more commonplace, I think, as well.
And that's actually a really beautiful thing about the introduction of tech, because so many people are reticent, thinking, oh, this is going to take away my job, it's going to change my remit. But actually, it's going to change your remit to open up opportunity for you to potentially upskill and develop and move into another field.
Definitely.
Potentially a better paid area as well.
Yeah, look, I get asked this question a lot as well about, tech's going to take jobs and, tech in construction. It's not going to, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that, tech is not going to replace anybody in the construction site, because, it may well do in future. That may be the future that's happening, but tech is there to enhance what you're trying to achieve, right? It's there to make your working life better and easier and safer. So embrace it. That's what it's all about.
That's a really nice segue as well, I think, into my last question, which is about future trends. Where would you put your money if you were looking at future construction technology trends?
I'm going to be really boring, and I'm going to say AI.
If I had a penny for every time somebody says that.
Everybody says AI, but for good reason. I'm going to kind of put a little bit of a spin on it as well. So everybody's talking about AI, massive industry trend, well, not just in the construction industry, but everywhere. AI is everywhere. I think you get a lot of companies, they just put AI on the end of their company name and say we're an AI software company. Not necessarily the case. They might be utilising something in AI, but what I see as the big kind of trends moving forward will be like predictive analytics within AI. So imagine a construction company that can predict when they're going to complete a task on time, what risk factors they've got. Have you done your planning section correct? Do you know that let's say somebody puts a schedule into a specific piece of software, and there are a number of these out in the market now. They use historical data that they've done on previous projects, and then they start to say, well, okay, you said it took us we planned for 16 weeks to complete this task. But actually, if we look at your previous project's information, we think you'll do this in 10 weeks. The next task, you said 6 weeks, it will take 8 weeks. By giving the companies the ability to then accurately predict when they're going to finish their work, or, applying the correct staff numbers on a job, that's going to be hugely beneficial. And I think that's probably going to have a bigger impact than a lot of the other tech that you see out there. So AI definitely, with a bit of a caveat in that not just AI everywhere, but more on the predictive analytics side of things. I think that's going to be huge. Just analysing, we spoke about data, right? This is what this is really all about. It's about analysing that data and making better informed decisions from that.
But you've got to make sure that internally the data literacy of your team is on point for that. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, look, it's data in, data out, right? You've got to get the right data in to make that. But I think the good thing about some of the AI kind of learning models and things that are coming out now, it is becoming more and more intelligent, and I think with planners on a construction site, with construction managers, they're very experienced in building this out. A lot of it's generally done on paper. They'll do it on a whiteboard, or there'll be sticky notes all over the place in a construction office. You put that into a laptop, you put that into a piece of software that can interrogate that and give you the right information. It's a hugely powerful tool.
Yeah, totally agree. And lastly, Tony, because I always ask our guests this, if you were to give a construction professional or a technology enthusiast some advice on entering the industry, what would that be?
Wow, that is an interesting question. I mean, look, I think construction professionals, the only thing I'd really say about tech, embrace it. My favourite saying in construction is, we've always done it that way. And I'm sure, if there's any listeners out there that are in construction, they'll probably have a little smirk to themselves when they hear that, but it's true. That's what people will say. Embrace it. Tech's here to stay. It's here to help you. You'll have some, ups and downs along the way, but don't shy away from it. I think embrace the tech, use it to its fullest potential. And it will help you. That's the key thing for me. For technologists, I mean, I always say with people that are trying to get into construction tech, look at how you can enhance existing systems, okay? By and large, a lot of construction technology that's around now has been developed by people in the industry. So they've been in the industry for a number of years. They've seen, a gap, they've seen a problem.
Like our own CEO.
Exactly right. They've seen a problem within the market. How can we fix that? And they develop a solution to deal with that. Now, on the flip side of that, that's great, but they might not always be, tech savvy, if that makes sense. They might not always be extremely au fait with all the technology solutions out there. Now, if you imagine an up and coming, youngster that's AI illiterate and they've got all the skills available, taking some of those solutions and perfecting it, making it a lot better, I think that's what I'd really advise people to do. Sure, try and invent the next big thing, which everybody wants to do, right? But I think if you can take a solution that's almost there but not quite, and try and perfect it, that's gonna have such a bigger impact in the industry.
The one thing that I always say to people when they ask me that question is I'm like, learn to code.
Oh yeah.
Learn to code from a young age.
Yeah.
Because code is going to serve as your greatest, let's call it like your greatest skill that you can monetize within this world. Well, there we are. Tony, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been an absolute pleasure finally being able to get you in the podcast booth. I'm really excited over the next couple of days. Obviously, you're here for an event within the city, but I'm also really excited for the listeners to hear this one. I think it's a fresh take and will definitely dispel some of that confusion around platform technology for sure.
Look, I really appreciate it, Maddie. I've been dying to get on the podcast, so it's been a really good one. I really appreciate it.
Great. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks.